Hi guys. So this video is walking you guys through your first essay assignment. And in this unit, you guys read a number of different short stories across different genres, movements, historical eras, and different subject matter. So you guys are going to essentially look at one of the texts that you read in this unit and analyze that text in terms of the different elements that we study. So characterization, imagery, point of view, all those different sort of literary elements. So the prompt is simple. You're going to choose one of the short stories read in this unit and develop a written analysis of that particular work. So contextualize the analysis by looking at different literary terminology from the course lectures. So characterization, like I said, point of view, allegory, setting, myth, whatever it might be. Create a concrete thesis argument, so a good claim around a central literary focus. So one of these elements should be the central focus, and then include main ideas that are supported by evidence from the text. So your choices are Story of an Hour, Hills Like White Elephants, Yellow Wallpaper, A and P, Two Kinds, Everyday Use, Cask of Amontillado, Good Man is Hard to Find, and The Lottery. So make sure to consider what the primary literary element is that you want to focus on. So whether that's setting or conflict or characterization. Don't try to do too broad of a choice. Don't try to do a number of different things as your primary. You can have secondary elements, but I want you to really dig into, say, one focus, whether it's the setting is the most important or the conflict or the imagery is most important. You decide what's the most important sort of element to focus on within that text. So think about what your argument is around that element. So don't just tell me that the setting is important in, say, Hills Like White Elephants. You have to tell me that the setting is important because it represents X, Y, or Z. So maybe it represents the isolationism of America in politics after World War II. That could be an argument. If you're going to talk about symbolism or say, I'm going to do symbolism in the lottery. Why the symbolism is important in the lottery is because it represents archaic religious ideals from an earlier period of American history. That is an argumentative statement that has to do with one central literary element, but it moves beyond just telling me that the setting is important in the lottery, or the symbolism is important in the lottery. So think about what the primary element is, and then think about what other elements the author uses to achieve a certain goal or message or meaning. Because remember that all of these authors are writing with a specific message in mind. There's something that they're trying to convey to their audience. So for example, in Everyday Use, it's about the trappings of consumerism and modern consumerism, right? And why that's wasteful. It's self-indulgent. If you're looking at something like the Yellow Wallpaper, the message there is about why women and treatment of female hysteria was ineffective and almost cruel at the turn of the century. So think about what elements the author uses to convey that message. So example, in Everyday Use, symbolism is really important. The symbolism of the quilt is very important. The dialogue is equally important because it conveys certain truths about this family and about this culture in America. If you do, say, the Yellow Wallpaper, again, we come back to symbolism. The yellow wallpaper itself is a symbol. It's very, very significant. You could also talk about the setting of the room. You could talk about the characterization. There's a lot of different things you could talk about. So think about how authorial intent plays into the structure. So why does the author structure the story the way they do? For example, Hills Like White Elephant is, as we've talked about, is focused entirely almost in dialogue. Why does Hemingway do that? Is he showing how they're hiding things by saying nothing? So they're saying a lot, but they're really saying nothing. Or are they saying something by not saying it? That's why dialogue is really important, because it's a way of conveying a truth without ever actually saying it. If you're looking at, for example, Everyday Use, why does she use a specific dialect? Why is that important? The same thing with The Lottery. Why is that sort of Southern dialect used, or that sort of homesy, folksy dialect used to convey the horror of what they're doing? Same thing with A and P. You can look at how the imagery is described or how the characterization is described. So why does the author do what they do? And then think about what kind of critiques you can make around the text. So what could you critique about, say, a good man is hard to find, or the lottery, whatever it might be? You absolutely have a right to critique the narrative, but you have to do it with a particular reason or main idea or evidence to support. So you need to include at least one research source in your work. They does need to be cited correctly and included in a bibliography. It should be credible and informed, and it should add to the argument that you're making. So don't just use a source, say a biography of Shirley Jackson. While that's interesting, unless you're using it to talk about how Shirley Jackson's own biography influenced, say, the narrative structure. This could be something like, there's a number of online resources that are available to you, say PBS or literary analysis, government education websites. What I don't want to see are things like GradeSaver or 123helpme.com. These are not credible sources. This should be a source that discusses the work in depth and adds vital support to your argument. So your argument should have a clear thesis with main ideas, and you should expand on them with evidence from the text and from the outside source. So this means that you pull specific quotes from the text and from the outside source to show what you're talking about. That's how you support your analysis with evidence. Yes, you can do paraphrases as well, but typically quotes are much stronger forms of evidence. So for example, if you want to talk about how she is descending into madness in the yellow wallpaper, you would pull a quote that shows her descent into madness, say when she's crawling around the room going over his body. If you want to talk about the quilt, symbolism of the quilt in everyday use, pull a quote that shows why that quilt is a symbol for X, Y, or Z. So make sure you have good evidence. Your essay should be 3 to 4 pages in length. That means down to the bottom of the 3rd page at minimum. You can always write more, you just can't write less. If you write less, you'll have points taken off. And it is due by Sunday, March 1st at midnight. Mla formatting is required, so that means a header in the top left corner, name, course and section number, date, and instructor's name. Make sure you have a title. It doesn't need to be bold or italicized or anything like that, just regular font. And in the top right corner, page number on each page. You do need to include a bibliography that includes the work that you're talking about, as well as the source or sources that you use. Remember that a bibliography, of course, doesn't count towards the page requirement. And then everything will, of course, be checked for plagiarism. So your final essay grade is going to be consisting of 2 parts. So you'll be completing an outline. You don't need to turn it in separately. It'll already be turned in as assignment, but that'll be basically a 5th of your grade. So completing that will give you 20 points automatically. And then your final draft will be worth 80 points. So you guys are going to be assessed on making sure they have good, close analysis of the specific work and its major ideas, good evidence to support your claims from the primary and secondary sources, proper number of sources used, so at least 1, proper page length, MLA, and citations, fully developed essay structure, so making sure you have that introduction with a thesis claim, clear main ideas with evidence to support, and conclusion, and then a careful, clear organization of all ideas. So think about any of these elements. Like I said, we've talked about a lot of these as you're kind of thinking about what your primary focus is going to be and what the other elements are that you want to bring in. You want to keep your argument narrow and focused. You don't want it to kind of ramble and go through a lot of these. So kind of think about a select couple of these literary elements that you really want to focus on. So it could be characterization. You could look at things like protagonists or antagonists. Use this terminology, of course. Are they developed? Are they flat? Are they static? Are they round? Look at literary devices like similes, personification, foreshadowing, irony. Look at structure. Look at how they use the dramatic arc. Look at the conflict. Is it man versus man, man versus society? Look at the point of view or the narrator. Are they a reliable narrator? Is it first person? Is it third person omniscient? Why is that important? Look at the literary concepts like themes, motifs, allusions, style. And then You can also secondarily look at the historical context. So you can look at the author's biography or the historical events surrounding the work and how those are portrayed, say, in that work. So, for example, in A&P, modern American consumer culture is very, very important. So that might be something you want to bring in. In Hills Like White Elephants, you might want to secondarily point out that how Hemingway's own experiences in the war and his disillusionment with war and his own experiences as an expat kind of play into some of the themes within Hills Like White Elephants. Same thing with Charlotte Perkins Gilman and Yellow Wallpaper. So that could be of interest as well. So if you guys have questions, let me know. This is purposely broad. I'm letting you guys choose the work. I'm letting you guys choose the focus because I want you guys to choose what is of most interest to you and what you want to talk about. So one of these works should be of interest to you, and whichever literary elements are the most significant for you, I want you to be able to talk about that as well. So let me know if you have questions. You are going to do an outline, so that should help guide you as to how to develop some of this material and what this essay structure will ultimately kind of look like. But otherwise, feel free to email me if you have any questions. I'm happy to provide suggestions or give feedback on some of your ideas.